Dave Ramsey guy. We did an episode not that long ago regarding Dave Ramsey and kind of what he does. But did you get a lot of feedback about that? And how does that go? Do other people jump on the Dave Ramsey bus, or did they jump off, or did you get any feedback?
Yeah, we got a lot of comments actually on there. So I kind of wanted to go through and kind of give my thoughts on some of the more, some of the top comments.
All right, here he is, your realty expert, John Brodeen.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing wonderfully groovy today.
It's good to see you guys again.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
How have you been?
Good.
Yeah, you were at the big fights over the weekend. You were actually a corner man.
Yep. I was cornering my buddy Dre, and then we had a couple other guys from my gym fighting, so it was fun rooting them on.
So was it a good day for your gym?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
2 out of our 3 guys won, and it was definitely a good day for our gym.
Awesome.
Fun watching those guys.
Yeah, well, you were out doing that. I had one of your realty experts fishing in a boat with me on Saturday.
Yeah, you and McKenna.
Yeah, and she did well.
That's awesome.
She also broke my brand new reel, but she did well.
We'll forget about that part.
Yeah.
Send her a Venmo request.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go, McKenna.
No, they were good girls to have with. It was a good time.
That's awesome.
You're a Dave Ramsey guy. We did an episode not that long ago regarding Dave Ramsey and kind of what he does. But did you get a lot of feedback about that? And how does that go? Do other people jump on the Dave Ramsey bus, or did they jump off, or did you get any feedback?
Yeah, we got a lot of comments actually on there. So I kind of wanted to go through and kind of give my thoughts on some of the more, some of the top comments. And this one, this guy, Benny something, says, Dave's structure accounts for downside risk. Financially, a person may have to move to a cheaper area or buy a small apartment as a starter level entry level house. The money guy suggests 5% deposit for your starter home, but 20% for upgrade home purchase, and 25% of take-home pay covering a 30-year mortgage. So that's important. So this is another financial expert, the money guy. And so he says 5% down instead of 20 for your first home, but then 20%, when you make an upgrade home purchase down the road, which is much easier because by then, that time you've accumulated some equity, so you can roll the equity into the next one. I like that idea. And then same as Dave Ramsey, 25% of your take-home pay, your payment should be no more than 25% of your take-home pay is what this guy says, but on a 30-year mortgage instead of a 15.
Okay.
So I would say in 2024, depending where you live, in order to follow the Dave Ramsey method of 15-year loan, 25% of your take-home pay and putting 20% down, if you live in an expensive area and you don't have a very high income, it's going to be really tough for you to pull off the Dave Ramsey approach. This is more reachable, and it's still pretty sound advice, so I do like this. This guy says, Dave is all about doing smart things to protect the average person. He may set harder guidelines to play it safe. I don't think it's totally wrong to go out of the guidelines a little bit considering how much has changed recently. One just has to keep in mind to be prepared for the unexpected situations and don't housebreak themselves. Don't be housebroke. People have become too comfortable with that recently. Another thing, things have changed a lot lately. Dave Ramsey, if there's any critique to his advice, it's that it's overly safe and overly conservative.
Yeah.
So I think that guy's right on. This guy says, I live in Los Angeles and a $180,000 house does not exist.
Yeah,
So
right.
you get some people chiming in and saying, one guy said, bigger deposit or smaller apartment. So bigger deposit, obviously you're going to be saving up for even longer. House prices are going to be higher if you got to save for 15 years instead of saving up for 5 years.
Right.
So that's, it's kind of a wash, but that's the way that you'd be able to follow the Dave Ramsey approach in an inexpensive market, but it's going to be much tougher in an expensive market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rents aren't cheap there either. So while you're saving up, it's not like you're going to have a ton of money left over unless you have a very high income.
Right.
Let's see. So given that Dave's audience are people that have put themselves in a spot and don't understand finance very well, I think it's a little bit of an overly safe recommendation. If you're going to take a lot of risk and huge payment that eats up your free budget, you better know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I agree with that it could be overly safe, but I don't think even if you say you know what you're doing, making yourself house broke, I don't think is good.
No.
People who know what
you still
they're
have
doing,
to live and have a life,
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that could mean that if you have a whole bunch of money in the bank, then maybe you don't need to pay attention to that guideline of 25%, because your income might be in the mid range or whatever. But if you've got a few $1 million in the bank, you've got that's generating income as well.
Yeah.
So
like everybody's got a couple million hanging out in the bank,
Yeah. I'm thinking more about maybe older people who are
Sure.
maybe retiring or something like that. Maybe they're not working full time anymore, but they're not fully retired. So their income isn't terribly high, but they've got a lot of assets. That's where it might be kind of tough to squeeze something in under 25% of their working income, but they've still got, plenty of assets to fall back on.
Now, when you compare Dave Ramsey to, who was it, the money guy, they're like completely different. You're talking a 15-year compared to a 30-year. You're talking percentages that are a lot different. Is the money guy, especially for, say, younger home buyers, is it a little more realistic, do you think?
I think it's more attainable for sure.
Sure.
If you're living in a place, he still says 25% of your income, but with a 30-year loan.
Right,
so that you don't need quite as high of income to be able to buy a home, especially in an expensive market.
Yeah. That's just about going to cut your mortgage in half, wouldn't it? By knocking 30 or 15 years? Well, no, not in half, but it does make a big difference.
It makes a big difference. It definitely would increase how much you're able to afford.
Sure.
I'm not terribly familiar with that guy. I should really look him up and maybe we do a video on what he thinks. But I think that is maybe going to apply to a wider population in 2024 with how things are today. It's not as conservative, not as safe as what Dave Ramsey recommends. But then again, the critique on Dave Ramsey is that it's overly safe and overly conservative. So as long as people know where these different advice where they fall on kind of that spectrum between risk versus super safe, it's up to people to make their own decision there.
Sure.
Like we talked about in the last episode, getting into a place earlier, getting into a place 8 years before you would if you were following the Dave Ramsey approach, it could go wonderfully for you if the real estate market keeps doing well. If the real estate market, something really bad were to happen, you could feel like a total fool. So, imagine in those 8 years, prices go up by 15%. So you would have benefited from that had you bought earlier.
Yeah.
You would be really hurting from that had you rented that whole time, and then now you've got to buy at a much more expensive price.
Sure.
So some of it's like, you can kind of count on the real estate market, what it's based on previous results, you can kind of expect a certain trend over long periods of time, but you never know what it's going to do over like a smaller stretch of time, like 3 or 5 years. So it's a little bit of a gamble whichever way you decide to go.
Right.
Some people say the best time to buy a house was 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now.
That makes sense.
So but if you were to say that in 2007, it wouldn't be true.
Right. We talk about the difference between a 30 and a 15-year mortgage.
Yes.
If you have a 30-year mortgage and you pay 13 payments a year, does it really make that big of a difference? Because I was told it does, but I was never in that situation where I could do that.
Yeah, I did actually get a comment. Let's see if I can find it. So this might be what you're talking about, and I don't know if this is true or not. But this is just a random comment this guy left. And he said, you pay less interest paying off a 30-year mortgage in 21 years than paying off a 15-year mortgage in 15 years. Less interest, and you get 6 more years to pay it off.
Yeah.
I'd have to see the math on that. I'm not going to take this guy's word for it, but maybe that's something I'll do and calculate at some point.
Yeah, because I was always told if you make one extra mortgage payment a year, it makes a huge difference and knocks a bunch of time off your mortgage and all of this and that. But like I said, at that point in my life, I just couldn't afford to do that.
Yeah, and there were a number of other comments that said, buy the house with a 30-year mortgage and try to pay it off at the rate of a 15-year loan. Set up your automatic payments to pay extra towards principal each month, which... the nice thing about that, so when you get a 30-year mortgage versus a 15-year mortgage, the interest rate is going to be higher on a 30-year mortgage.
Right.
But if you run into hard times and you're having a hard time affording that 15-year mortgage payment, with a 30-year, you can just drop it back down to the 30-year mortgage payment until you get your feet underneath you.
Sure.
15-year, there's less room for error. You would have to like refinance or something.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. This person said, My only issue with Dave Ramsey's approach is that he'd have you living in the ghetto for 8 years. Yeah, it's in some places like in Grand Forks, North Dakota, buying a $180,000 house, you're not living in a war zone.
No, you're
in
not.
A nice,
You're not.
pleasant neighborhood.
Sure.
But there are definitely places where
Oh, yeah.
you could be living in a pretty rough, dangerous area if you.
I was up
a certain amount.
a couple years back. We were up at Victoria Island, British Columbia. The average house worth up there was almost $1 million. It was $900-some thousand.
That's close to Vancouver, right?
Yep. And boy, you talk about crazy
Canadian
nice
prices.
places. Yeah.
Oh my God, Canadian prices.
Yeah.
Do you remember how we talked about the median income to median sale price rate, like ratio?
Yep.
How many times the median income is the median sale price for a house?
Yep.
Canada is through the roof. Yeah. Like their median incomes are slightly higher than the United States, but it's like in the United States, I think it's like 6 point something times the median income is the median sale price nationwide. And in Canada, it was like, I don't want to say a number, but it was like many multiples higher.
Yeah.
Their real estate markets, especially in their big cities, are insanely expensive there.
I'll have to. I'm friends with a lot of Canadians that come down
You'll
for the
have to ask
racing.
them.
I'll have to talk
See
to
what
them
they
about
think.
that. Yeah,
And I'm sure in rural areas in Canada, it's more reasonable too.
Sure,
same
just
way
like it is in the United States.
But
Yeah,
they've got those huge. I think in Canada, it's an even more dramatic, where it's like a huge population, a huge percentage of their population lives in those big cities, and far fewer people live in those rural areas.
Yep.
So I think in America, there's more people living in rural communities, to my understanding.
Yeah,
So,
that could be.
let's see. This person said, listening to this guy actually makes me want to think that Dave Ramsey's way works. Can't tell if that's a compliment or a insult, but I'll take it.
Yeah, right.
This was the most upvoted comment. It's kind of a negative one. It says, so stay out of debt when you don't have two nickels to rub together is outdated. Yeah, but staying out of debt is a good thing if you can avoid it.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would say he sounds like a Dave Ramsey supporter, but then there were some people arguing with him in the comments. Someone brings up an important point about the Dave Ramsey method that I didn't cover. Not having a credit score is idiotic. Most people can't put 20% down and get a 15-year mortgage. So this guy is definitely a Dave Ramsey opponent. And so we talked about the 20% down and 15-year mortgage already. But not having a credit score. So Dave Ramsey suggests that people don't take out credit cards or do any loans to build their credit score. And somebody had said, well, then get your mortgage manually underwritten. I've heard this is an option. I don't know how easy or good of an option this is. I mean, I know for me, when I was 18 years old, I took out a secured credit card because they didn't trust, I had no credit score. So they wouldn't give me a credit card with a limit where it was like an IOU where they were like, yeah, you've never had a credit card. You've never had debt before. So, I needed my credit limit was like $300.
Yeah. Yep.
And I had to deposit $300, but it still started building my credit score.
Sure.
And I still have that card open today because, like we know after talking on this show, the longer your oldest line of credit is open, the high, it's very good for your credit score.
Yes.
Keep that oldest line of credit open, unless you're Dave Ramsey follower. You say no credit cards, shred them all, close all the accounts. Whatever. You can shred your credit card, forget the number, but keep that account open.
Sure.
And let it build your credit history. I do think having a good credit score is really beneficial. It's going to open a lot of doors for you. I mean, there's stuff as simple as like for apartments, even check your credit score.
Oh yeah, they're checking credit scores.
Do you pay your
cell
bills
phone,
or not?
all that stuff.
So there's alternative ways to show that you can pay your bills, but those are probably going to be more work than just having a good credit score.
Sure.
And
when you talk about the Dave Ramsey method, you could talk about the money guy method, you could talk about whatever John Brodeen thinks for a method. But if somebody wants to find out what works right for them, if they're going to buy a house, what should their first step be?
Yeah, I mean, well, if they want to talk with me about it, my line's always open, 701-213-5428. And I know this area, so I can give you advice specific to our market and what's realistic here. If you're in that learning stage, look things up on the internet. Look at some of Dave Ramsey's advice. There's a guy named Humphrey Yang who gives great financial advice on it's more like personal finance, just guidelines on YouTube. I like him. The money guy sounds like another guy to check out. Even like Kevin O'Leary has given his thoughts on it. We've talked about that before. So get a few different opinions. Talk to somebody who's savvy with personal finance.
Sure.
It's good to compile a lot of different opinions, see what's suitable for your situation and where you're buying a house.
One more time, your phone number for realty expert John Brodeen.
Yeah, my cell is 701-213-5428.
All right, and we will see you on a couple of days on Friday.
Yes.
All right. There you go. John Brodeen reacting to comments on the Dave Ramsey episode. John Brodeen will be back again on Friday, all part of the Berkshire Hathaway bi-weekly podcast. Have a great day, and we'll hook up again Friday morning at 10.